Welcome to Hacking the Hustle, a podcast hosted by me, Benjamin Sklar, and I am honored to have Josiah Mann on the podcast. Josiah is the CEO of a very unique, interesting company called Josiah. Share it.
Investor deal.
Investor Deal
Yeah,
Room.
investor deal.
Yeah, I was going to explain what Investor Deal Room is, but I'll say
Sure.
it is a modern white label investor management platform that helps small investment companies and real estate syndicators impress their investors and streamline their back office. That's what you have on your website. So
Yep,
you,
that's
you
it.
I
I'm always working on the marketing on like how to say it and how to communicate the value proposition clearly, but that's it right now.
right. I feel the same struggle of how do you break down your company into one line?
Yeah, exactly. How do you there's good simple formulas for it, but there's a lot of thought that goes into how to actually communicate well in that simple formula.
Right. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Josiah. I know that you're based in Missouri. I know
Hmm.
that Brandon Turner of Open Door Capital, Bigger Pockets, the legend himself, is a customer of yours. And that's how I
Yeah.
learned about your business because he mentioned your company on the Bigger Pockets podcast. And
Okay.
and so that's pretty much all I know, besides that you have a background in software development. And that's pretty much it. So take the reins. Tell us about yourself, Josiah. What's the story?
Sure. Yeah. Really, I started out. I started by teaching myself to code. I was working a really crappy job for a long time. I didn't like it. I was bored. I was doing data entry at a hospital, making like $9 an hour for I don't know 5 years or something. Like way too long of my life. And I was really looking for like as I was there. Actually, I was like, man, I've got to find a way to use my tech skills or like I know I have a brain for technology because I'm working with all of these elderly women mostly who were my coworkers there.
Mhm.
And there was this kind of big migration happening at the time. When I got there, they were using these old DOS-based systems for data entry, and
Mhm.
they just moved to like graphical user interfaces. Hospitals were way behind everybody, so they were like using these point and click things. And everybody that except me and like hundreds of people in this office were like, "Oh, I don't know how to do anything." So I was like the guru of figuring out, and it was just like simple stuff because I grew up with with software and with websites. So I wanted to find some way to kind of develop that skill. And then at some point, I guess it's 2013, they laid me off, and it was a big company layoff, and they're really nice. They gave me a severance package, and I was like, okay, I'm going to use this opportunity to try to better my kind of career trajectory in some way. And I started getting like website design jobs, freelance, because I played with WordPress a little bit and figured out how to put together a website. Started finding freelance work. Pretty soon that led to the more techie developing like WordPress themes and customizing people's websites. And over the course of a few years, that led to uh, working at bigger and bigger companies. Kind of worked up the ladder doing that. And then the whole time I really wanted to build like a SaaS business, a software as a service business, because I felt like it was a more sustainable way to go. And it's just kind of an ideal that I developed over time. And then I became super, like, from a marketing perspective, when you're building a company, I had my like little web design business that was mainly just me. But when I was building that, I struggled because I'm just doing anything for anybody, like anything that will pay me money.
Mhm.
Um, and so you're not differentiated, you're not speaking to any specific audience. And I kept reading everybody's advice, like you need to have a niche you're in and you need to pick a niche and market to them. And I'm like, well, I don't know anything. I don't know what in the world niche to be in.
Mhm.
Um, so I became personally interested in real estate, started studying that. And over a long period of time, that kind of became the niche I was interested in. And then eventually started building software for real estate companies. And that's kind of the very, very short version of where we're at today.
Fascinating. What sources were you learning about real estate from?
I mean, let's see. I know that I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, like the book that all real estate investors read initially. That goes, it changes something in your brain. Everybody has that moment when they read that book, and I had the same moment reading that. And then I listened to a ton of podcasts about real estate investing. I know I read a ton, or read on Bigger Pockets a ton. And I was really looking to get involved in real estate myself and looking at like all the different ways people were doing real estate, fix and flips and multifamily and like and rentals, like what are the ways I can get involved. And really for a period of a couple of years, I was building like websites for people. I wasn't thinking about building websites for real estate. I was thinking about getting involved in real estate personally because I was like, I need to make more money. So, uh, but that's eventually those two things married together down the line. But it was a lot of podcasts, a lot of books. Yeah, that's where mainly where the education came from. And then eventually I ended up joining I don't know, like a coaching program type thing out in Boston, and paid a bunch of money, learned a bunch of good information, and then that's kind of what led me to the niche that I'm in now.
So how did you found Investor Dealer Room? What feedback did you get from
Yeah,
sponsors, investors that led you to start this specific type of company?
yeah. So I was the training I did was for real estate syndication and like how to buy these big apartments. That was the training I went through and I really dedicated about a full year of my life. We spent our life savings. We moved. We really were like, we're going to go buy an apartment. Like my wife and I were both all in.
Wow.
And then, so we started talking with all these apartment sponsors, people buying apartments and getting to know a bunch about the commercial real estate space. And then after about a year, I ran out of savings. Like, I don't have any money left. I have to go like work full time somewhere to replenish my savings, which I hadn't worked a job in I've been working like freelance for a long time. So kind of sucked. And then as I was working that job, it was probably 9 months in. The whole time I was like, kind of felt like a failure in real estate. I was like, I really wanted to make this happen, but I just ran out of runway. How do I make like that education that was so important? And I spent all this money on it. I can't like, I've got to make this into lemonade instead of this lemon that it is. So eventually I kind of gathered up the courage to like, I decided like I need to build software for that space instead of just to be close to the space that I know so much about. And the thing that was hard for me that I finally did was I didn't know what to build. So this is a problem with being a tech person. You just go build stuff and then nobody wants it. And you could spend years building something amazing that there's no audience for, nobody's willing to buy. And I've done that quite a few times. So I was exhausted even thinking about it. I was like, I can't go. I have to know that if I'm going to build something, it's like, I remember thinking about it like, I don't want to date another product that I build. I want a wife of a product, right? Like, I want the real deal. I don't want like a short-term thing that's not going to really work out for me. I want something that's a commitment for me. I'm willing to stay here. I'm willing to put through whatever it takes, and it's willing to give back a little bit. So, so then I decided, I know that there's real estate syndication that is a niche. I don't know how big it is. I have all these questions about it, but instead of just coming up with an idea, I thought that they would need a CRM. So that's the easy thing for my brain to do, is to say, well, I'll just build a CRM for them because that's what I would have needed. But instead, I ended up going on BiggerPockets and going on LinkedIn, and I put together a list of 100 syndicators and like tried to get their contact information. And then it was really hard for me to pull the trigger, but I put together an outreach message that was like, hey, I'm getting ready to build a product. I'm not selling you anything. I'm not asking for anything, but do you have any challenges in your business, or would you be willing to discuss those with me like over a quick call? And I don't know why it was so hard for me, but it was like a cripplingly hard thing for me to do, to like reach out to those people. Like, I literally was on the ground, like groaning to my wife, like, oh, I don't know what to do. And then it's like, I like had this internal thing that was like, don't be a sissy, like just push the button and call, like ask them instead of assuming, so you don't have this problem, right? So I did, and it really went well. Like, I don't know, probably 80% of people responded positively. Most of them got on a phone call with me. I learned a ton from it, and most of them actually weren't really syndicators. They weren't really qualified in the way that I was thinking of them. They were like, they dabbled, or they did this or that, or they were learning. But then when I could tell the difference when I really talked to somebody like, oh yeah, I have, 2,000 units of real estate and this and this and this. And their problems were totally different I kind of did these surveys, and they were totally different from the problems that the people with no money had. So the people with a lot of investors and a lot of money, had a totally unique set of problems. And I had another big challenge on picking what to do with all that data at the end of the day. But I ended up having 2/3 people out of all of them who had the exact same problem. It was really, really painful to them. They were like, I'm wasting tons of time. They're, I got them to really explain how painful the problem was. And I just decided, like, okay, that's the thing I'm going to build. I know that I knew that they'd be willing to pay me for a solution for it before I built it. So it's kind of, I went through this process to ask these questions. If you've ever read, there's a book called The Lean Startup, and then there's the 4 Steps to the Epiphany, which those are the two kind of books for how to build a startup in a way where you're not just, throwing crap at the wall and trying to figure it out. So I was trying to follow that process, but then I found a workbook that was real, because those are really broad philosophical, or like not philosophical, but like conceptual books. They're like, here's how you
Startup Now by Eric Ries. What's the second one you said?
The 4 Steps to the Epiphany. So it's his, what's his name? Steve Blank is the founder of the Lean Startup movement, and he was Eric Ries's teacher. So he teaches entrepreneurship at Stanford. Mm-hmm. So that was the original book that started the whole thing, and then Eric Ries kind of like narrowed it down and made it a little more clear with the Lean Startup. Mm-hmm. And I think Steve's book is even more conceptual. Eric's is the Lean Startup is a better, to me, it's easier to understand because it's a little more abstract. When somebody's done was in 15 startups and taught people for years. And so it gets more conceptual and less concrete. So, but even so, the Lean Startup I can't recommend it enough if you're building a business from scratch, right? There's some key insights there. One of them is, if you go to business school, or if you take any of these type of courses that are like business school, MBA type courses, like step 1, like pick your founding team, project a budget, financials. And I don't know a team. I don't have a penny in a bank account. You can't do that stuff unless you already have the resources to do it. And that's the difference between running a large organization and a small organization is really clearly defined in that book, The Lean Startup. So it was really helpful to me in knowing what the right path was to go from the ground up a little bit. But even so, I still kind of ran into some challenges with it being a little more on the abstract side. Can you still, okay.
Yeah,
I thought I lost you.
Listening.
Yeah, so it was a little bit not concrete enough. So I ended up finding a workbook, and I don't remember the name of it, but I looked really hard to find like workbooks I could go through that are like the step-by-step, because there were parts where I would get blocked. I'd be like, I don't really know what it means to they'd have you do certain diagrams or things, and it'd be too conceptual for me. And I'd never done anything like that before. So I feel like I'm just guessing to fill in the blanks of like, what does my partner pipeline look like? And how do I project sales? I'm like, I don't know. So I found something that was a little more concrete, and they're the ones who told me, they gave me like a spreadsheet that was, hey, here's a specific spreadsheet that you can go ask 100 people what needs to be built, and then ask them these questions. And for me, that was a lifesaver, because I had something specific where I could just go do it. And it didn't feel like I was just making something up. It felt like I was following a bit more of a process. Mm-hmm. So that's a very long-winded answer, but the result of that was that, I had a lot of thinking about who I wanted to work with. And since I built a website a long time ago, or a little product called eCheap Web Design, when I was first starting web design, and it was like cheap web design services. And I learned from experiences like that, like I didn't want to be working with the cheapest of the cheap people, mm-hmm. and then on call to people who didn't want to spend any money and wanted me to do all the work. So I want to work with people who have a success problem. Like, hey, I'm too successful. I'll pay you whatever it takes. I'm too successful. Help me to free my time up. Those were the problems I really wanted to solve. So I found working with sponsors that had a lot of success. They were managing 100+ investors. They're killing it in their business, but then they're like, man, every second of my day is taken up with answering investor requests or sending this back and forth. So they want to buy their time back. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem that we started out really by solving with Investor Deal Room.
Fascinating. It's a great story. Makes a lot of sense. And you are an inspiration for early stage founders. in regards to following the lean startup method and testing your hypothesis before you spend all your time and money on building a product before you even know there's demand in the market. So tell us about
All it takes all it takes is all the failures beforehand to realize that it doesn't work and you need a better
right,
process, right?
right. So tell us about like what was it like to launch the product and get customers and what's your vision for the future?
Yeah. Launching the product was cool because I started building it on the side. I was working at this job full time. I started building it, and because I was following the lean startup, honestly, I felt like for the first time, I felt certain that I was going to make it. Like I actually am going to make it because I've done it right this time. I
Mhm.
still had some lack of certainty about various aspects of things, but I felt like I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to get a completed product that people pay for. And right when I started building it, I called the people that were on the list that were on my survey list that I thought were really good prospects, these successful syndicators. And I said, hey, I know you had this problem, or I think I emailed them and said, I know you had this problem. I'm building a solution. Would you be open to giving me feedback as I build it? Like,
Mhm.
and both like 3 people said yes. Like, okay, great. So then 2 weeks later, I schedule a call and I'm like, hey, I've got this basic thing built. And I basically built out the working prototype of it, which was, it looked like it was functional, but it wasn't.
Mhm.
Um, got on a demo and started showing them and they got really excited about it. So I knew at that point, I was like, well, I think I asked them before this too. One of the questions I asked them early on was I said, okay, this you have this problem, it's costing you all this time and energy. How much would you be willing to pay, or like what would you be willing to pay to solve that problem?
Mhm.
And they told me. So the first one's like, well, I'd pay, I don't know, 250, $500 a month. I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, that's a business. Like that
Mhm.
makes some sense, like compared to, a $20 a month for hosting a website or something like that I've been doing in the past.
Mhm.
And then the other guy, one of the other guys I talked to said, well, actually, he's like, I already had this built by a company and it didn't meet his needs. It was like, he ended up spending like 70 grand on it and it still wasn't what he needed it to be. So that told me, and this is part of the lean startup process, but it's not just people talking about a problem. It's a real problem that they paid real money to solve.
Mhm.
So that kind of tells you about if it's a problem that you should spend time and energy building a company around.
Mhm.
So since I said, if I build a solution to this, would you be willing to pay me if it did these things that you said you needed done? And one of those customers agreed, or one of those prospects agreed to it, like right before I started or wasn't right before I started building it. I think it was after I showed him the second time, the prototype for the second time. So I got feedback the first time. A couple weeks later, I made all the changes he talked about. He's like really stoked about it. And I said, hey, if I get this and this working by this date, would you be willing to uh, is it something you'd pay for? And he's like, yeah, definitely. It's like really solving a problem for us. So I basically got a verbal commitment for my first client. And then at the same time, my second client I've been talking to offered to invest in the company so I could go do it full time.
Wow.
Um, and what was really funny was I had never thought about taking investor funds. It never even crossed my mind. I was just going to do it and build it bootstrapped. But he's the one who built the software. He had paid 70 grand for the software, so he knew firsthand how important it was, and he had spent a lot of money on it. And I was just like, I wasn't asking for permission. Like, I'm just going to go build it. He's like, hey, this looks good. It's nice. He really wanted to resell his own software, but he knew he couldn't run a software company. So he's like, maybe, what if I can let you do this full time? Would you be interested? And initially I was like, look, I'm not giving up any of my company. It's not happening. Um, but over time, I really liked him. He was really respectful, and we tried something out kind of like as a short-term thing. And then I ended up moving to Texas and working out of his office, and just to learn from him for the next year and let him invest in the company. And yeah, that's kind of how we got our start.
It's amazing. So where
Yeah.
are you today? What's going on?
Yeah. So today, let's see. I don't. We've been alive. We started 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago. That's when, and it was just me at the time. Um, After we kind of got our first client and we started uh, getting a few sales, I brought on my brother and started hiring. And I've ended up hiring all family until just recently. So I have two brothers and a brother-in-law that work with me, and then we now have two full-time developers as well. Um, so that's four, five, six. we'll probably hire another person pretty soon. So we have 6 full-time employees right now. And we're mostly profitable. It's always, it depends on how you look at the accounting, but what that means is we don't have to take funds. So like we're in a market where there's a couple other competitors who are doing similar things that we are, and everybody has taken funds. They all did a seed round of about $1.5 million each and they were probably at a later stage or an earlier stage in their development than we are. Like we were a little bit more mature than that, and we haven't had to take funds. I don't know if that's because I'm scared to take funds and I don't know what it means, or if it's because I'm really wise and shrewd and like, no, we're going to figure it out on our own. So I guess time will tell. But right now we're not in the position you don't want to be in is, hey, we're burning cash every month. We can't, we're going to die as a company. Please give us money. I don't want to be in that position. So now we're in a position where we can reinvest our own money in growing the company, and yeah, I'm really excited about it. We've seen a lot of growth recently. Really, with the hard thing about being a technical founder is getting it, for me at least, because I did it all bootstrapped, is getting out of the product, because I built everything, I designed everything. Then as I've brought on a team, it's hard to delegate. It's hard to like give over the reins to somebody else, to find somebody trustworthy enough, and also to just let go and lead well enough. It's a different thing to lead somebody, because in my experience, if I'm just telling them, here's what to do this, like there's a very limited amount of energy I can give to like micromanage every aspect of my company. And so you have to start defining like the outcome. Here's the outcome that we want to achieve, and then letting go of how it gets done. Like, I don't care how you code this. At the end of the day, I want to make sure that X occurs. Mm-hmm. So what's happened for me has been much more of a transition into leadership instead of just doing all of the technical parts of the company, which is a big change. But there's really no other way to grow the company. If I'm not leading and focusing on growth, then the product will continue being really, really good, and there won't be enough people to pay the bills. So
tell me about your sales process. Who is a potential customer, and what is the experience like for them in going through your demo and your onboarding process?
Great questions. I've just started to be able to really optimize this to what I think is a good standard. Right now we have a couple lead magnets that are our main lead magnets on the website. So they come to the website. Well, first of all, even before then, we've been doing some different events where I'll either speak in an event at a conference, or I'll sponsor a conference to get a speaking spot there, and do a little bit of thought leadership and training on for sponsors. An ideal customer at those events is somebody who has done a real estate syndication deal, and that's basically they've gone and bought a mobile home park, an apartment, or what's the other one? Self-storage units, but they've gone and bought something substantial, like in the range of $5 to $15 million, and they raised money from 20 to 100 plus investors, pulled those together in what's called a syndication, and then bought this property, and then they are the asset manager of that property. That's an ideal client for us. And so we'll speak at these. I've been speaking at these events or connecting that way, and we have a lot of referral business right now. But over time, it's more thought leadership type things. We'll go speak at an event. They'll come, and then the call to action will be, "Hey, we've got this resource." We just did this at this conference I did recently, where it's a bunch of syndicators who've syndicated deals before, and we put together this bundle that's the ultimate real estate syndication bundle. And basically, from all of these successful syndicators that I already work with, I know like their best practices for how they organize information and how they reduce wasted time and all of that stuff. So it's a bunch of spreadsheets and templates for how to organize and run your business efficiently as you're kind of scaling up. So that's been a lead magnet we've done. And then we have one other lead magnet. But so we do that when somebody downloads that, then we have right now, we just got this finished. It's basically an email sequence that goes out to them over the period of like 10 days. It's a 6-part email sequence, kind of following a bit of a formula, but digging into some of the different pains specifically that my ideal client would be having, which is I'm wasting too much time answering redundant questions from investors, or when we do a capital raise, it's crazy. Like it just feels disorganized. Those are the types of pains that really speak to our client and we're able to help with.
Were you on the Joe Fairless podcast?
No, I wasn't on Joe Fairless podcast. One of my competitors was, though.
Oh, really? Okay. So
Yeah,
it sounds like you're in a growing industry. I myself want to be a syndicator, a sponsor, and I assume every other young, ambitious, motivated hustler out there wants to be a syndicator. Everyone's interested in commercial real estate.
Yeah.
So you building a software platform for guys like me who I'm not an ideal customer because I haven't done a deal, but for someone like me, let's say 5 years from now, who has 500, 1,000 units under their belt,
Yep.
and they're looking for a software platform to make it easier for them.
Sure. So there's two interesting things here. One, I started on the other end and I'm working my way down. What I mean is I started with really successful people so that I made enough money to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. And now we're working our way back and saying, okay, we have a lot of people who are just starting out and they need professional credibility. They need to be able to stay organized on their first deal so they get repeat investors. Because if you have like a slick capital raising process and you can like all of this stuff is in one place for your investors, they're more likely to reinvest. So basically we've had to though work our way back and make the software, make it easier for us to sell it for a lower price, basically. And because we've done so much, like we have a customer success manager who teaches you everything in the process, makes sure that you're successful on your deals. So that's something we've been trying to do, and that's why we're doing some of our partnerships, like partner with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Cash Flow Connections podcast and Hunter Thompson, another great real estate and economics podcast, but we partner with some of those guys to offer a lower tier product. The other interesting thing from my perspective is the reason I never did a syndication was because I had too many unanswered questions and I didn't feel like it was safe for me to risk investor capital when I didn't feel sure. I didn't feel certain about the deals I was looking at, the market timing. And so somebody smarter than me was like, hey, you need, like, real estate will always be here. Market's a little crazy right now. Like maybe you find a way to offer software to the industry or do something else to provide value right now, and then come back when you feel more comfortable. Mm-hmm. So the benefit to me is I'm playing the game. Like I'm in the game. I'm seeing everybody that's doing deals. I'm seeing bad deals and good deals. So I'm in the space, but I haven't had to take the risk, and I'm able to kind of learn by other people who are doing it well. So that's like, I'm sure that I'll syndicate deals too eventually. This just provides a great, for me personally, a great education opportunity. Like I'm kind of in the world and everybody knows me. So that's cool.
Definitely. You're in a good spot. Tell me about the business model. How do you generate revenue? What's your pricing model?
Yeah, it's a recurring revenue software business. So we have a monthly license fee that ranges. Our current pricing ranges from $500 to $1,000 a month, and then we charge a one-time onboarding fee. We have a couple other one-time like services that we do optionally. So we do like we'll help people with their set up their subscription documents in DocuSign and different stuff like that. But for the most part, it's mainly a recurring revenue business with a monthly license fee.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Seems like a significant price point that people who are your customers have to not only be able to afford $500 to $1,000 a month, but it's so obvious that it's a no-brainer to pay for your product that you're saving the money. So I assume they have to be the real deal kind of guys and girls who have at least multiple syndications going on every year.
You do. So we've like I said, we have really, if you do, like, it depends on how big the deal size is. Like if somebody has a deal and right now it's harder, right? With everything is compressed, cap rates are compressed, and the commercial real estate market, it's hard to get a deal with a ton of cash flow in it. A lot of the money is happening from value adds, and people, like, a lot of that money happens on the back end of deals right now. Mm-hmm. So definitely, like, you do one small deal, it's not necessarily like as soon as you do your very first deal, if it's a small deal, that it's an ideal thing for you. Some people build that into their model, and they like just know that it's a necessity. Like we have a lot of clients who've worked in private equity real estate at bigger companies.
Mm-hmm.
And when they launch their new, like their own independent company, they're like it's just a business expense. We know that we have to have it because I don't want to have to do the administrative. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the way I try to think about software in my business, and also hiring. Like, it's $500 a month. If you're not spending time answering investor questions, let's say it's 20 hours a month of answering stupid investor questions. Not that the investor is stupid, but like redundant questions.
Mm-hmm.
Can you generate an extra $500 a month in revenue in your business? And if the answer is yes, then that's the ROI, right? Like that's the decision. As an entrepreneur myself, that's the way I have to, because I'm making software, buy software, and I hire employees. Always have to look at that. Can I really generate an ROI with that extra time?
I like it. There's so much opportunity for you to partner with equity brokers, mortgage brokers, people who are in the game talking to your potential customers
Mm-hmm.
and giving them an incentive to be affiliates.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of our, like I said, it's been 3 years of me being a developer and designer, and I'm just now extracted enough to where I have a team that's doing all of those things for me. And so that's where the company focus is really shifting to have a good affiliate program and to build partner relationships, because there's so much, there's so much networking, there's so many great podcasts in the space, that those are the things we're going to work on over this coming year.
Nice. All right, so before I let you go, Josiah, let me ask you a few questions. What's your favorite real estate related book?
I mean, probably a couple. Can I give two?
Yeah.
I'm gonna give two. Okay. Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's the book that turns the light bulb on for so many people, and for me too. It was definitely like a wow type book.
Mm-hmm.
I also, especially right now, there's a book called I think Emerging Real Estate Markets by Dave Lindahl, and that book is talking about market cycles. And for anyone who went through the 2008 market crash and was like, oh crap, I want to make sure this never happens again in real estate. Understanding market cycles is how you make sure that doesn't happen again to you. So that was a very important book to me as well.
What service do you need from a service provider right now?
Service from a service. Can it be? Is it software or a service provider?
Either or.
I mean, I need an administrative assistant. I know that I do. It's going to cost me more energy to train an administrative assistant than it will to do it myself. And so at some point soon, I'll have to hire an executive assistant / administrative assistant.
Do you want that assistant to be US based, or can they be in the Philippines?
No, it'll be in the Philippines, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Do you know how to hire yours?
I don't.
I've hired 10 and have fired 20. So
okay, well, we'll have to have a conversation. I don't think I'm good at it, but I know that's the direction I'm going to go.
I've read many articles about it back in the day, and it seems like the best route forward is to go to onlinejobs.ph.
Okay.
Pay $70, post your job application, have 100+ people apply, and have them all answer a handful of questions, similar to how you reached out to all your customers, and have people go through a sequence of flows, and then you choose your top 5, you hop on the phone with them, you choose your number 1. And
yeah, that's a great, I've hired my last 2 developers on Upwork, and I didn't do as thorough of a process, but I know that space a lot better. But I feel like you're right that I would need to have a much, like, that role was really, really important to me, and there's a high standard of some of those things. So it's important to have a good process for that. So I will follow your advice there.
I'll give you my former
your templates.
Yeah, I'll give you my assistant, Kimberly. She's smart as me, based in the Philippines. Yeah. So last question. If there's one thing you could do to improve this world, what would it be and why?
It's a good question, Benjamin.
Call me Benji.
Benji, okay. One thing's tough. I think I would create media. I would create a media company that put out entertainment content of a different, I don't know, that was a different standard than currently exists today. Like I would have an inspirational media company that inspired people to just do good. I don't know. I could go really, really far in depth about that, but I would be putting out inspirational content that inspired people to just be good and do good, and not judgmental and like super religious or anything like that. Just inspirational.
So you're saying that you think Disney should hire Gary Vee to create a inspirational media company. I agree with you. I think inspirational,
Interesting
educational,
idea. Yeah.
entertaining content's the best in the game. All right,
Mm-hmm.
Josiah, it was awesome having you on the podcast. I haven't recorded a podcast in months. I was in law school. I had exams. COVID hit, so my business struggled. And now I'm on the come up again. So here we go, back on the podcast grind. Awesome to have you on the show.
Honored to be here. Thank you so much, and great to meet you.
Yeah, great to meet you too. I'm excited to see where you go with Investor Deal Room. I have no doubt that you're going to see some exciting things ahead. So thanks again. Wish you the best and be in touch.
All right. Have a good one.
See ya. By the way, you still there?